Welcome to this super quick interview refresher course. In this course, we will quickly cover the questions that is generally asked from a Java J2E developer or a production support guy from web server perspective. We will only cover the questions which are frequently used in this short course. Alright, so the first question which is asked in every interview, which is the question, what is the difference between a web server and a application server? This is almost asked from every web developer or a support guy. From Java perspective, a web server is a simple container that can only execute JSP and servlets and can handle few basic protocols like HTTP, HTTPS and AJP. Tomcat and Jetty comes under the category of web server. An application server, on the other hand, can not only handles HTTP but can handle other protocols as well, like JMS for Java messaging, Corba, etc. And they also are capable of supporting enterprise Java beans. Okay, although this is not very used since the advent of Spring framework, but these capabilities our application server should have, okay, to qualify itself to be called as an application server. Few common example of application server could be JBoss or WebSphere application server, which is a IBM product, or WebLogic application server, which is supported by Oracle. Okay. Now the second very important question is, how can you change the port of Tomcat from 8080 to some default HTTP port like 80? So how would you do that? Okay. The answer to this is very simple. In Tomcat, we have a file in the configuration folder called server.xml, and in server.xml we have defined multiple connector ports. So for HTTP there is a connector port defined, and we need to simply change the port number 8080 to the port that we want. So generally we make it 80 because this is default. Okay, so we can change it from there. Okay. You might also get a question from logging, like what type of details are logged in catalina.log. So what happens is, when you start the server, the various listeners write some startup information into a log file, and this file is nothing but catalina.log. So these information starts from showing various runtime parameters of server, then starting up of various connector, then loading the configuration file and property files, and based on the configuration it initializes some of the parameters, then it initializes SSL, then connector ports to accept the request, and thereafter loading and initializing of various applications. So, and in between the process, if any exception occurs, then that is also logged in this catalina.log file. So apart from that, if you hot deploy or undeploy any application, that information is also logged inside catalina.log file. So this basic information is very much needed from interview perspective. So, or you could be asked from other way around, like if any error happens, what is the first location that you would check to find the error? So obviously the answer is that you would first approach for the log files. Now the log files can be of different, it could be the log file of the middleware or could be of application. But generally, as a production support guy, we first figure out from our middleware perspective via the log file like what went wrong. Okay, so this was one of the important questions. Then a frequently asked question which is asked from all the junior level guys, like how would you deploy an application on Tomcat? So the answer to this is that we have a web app folder in Tomcat, okay, which is a default deployment folder unless we change it. So inside the web app we simply deploy the war file, or we can also deploy the uncompressed application into this folder location. You may also be asked like what is hot deployment and what is cold deployment. So the hot deployment simply means that the server is up, and while the server is up only, you are deploying something and you are not restarting the server. Okay, so this is hot deployment. The other type of deployment is cold one, in which you first bring down the server. You first shut down the server, then you deploy the application, and then you make the server up so that the application can become accessible. Okay, so this is the basic difference. For hot deployment, you may further be asked how to do it. So there is nothing special in that, only a configuration change has to be there. So in server.xml, if your auto deploy in the host tag, okay, is set as true, then you can easily hot deploy and you need not require to restart the server after deployment. So if it is set to false, then whenever you deploy the application, you need to restart the server to make the changes or to load the application. Okay.